Welcome to the Raise podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. We're here to raise your confidence and inspire your creativity. Each episode, we will have a different guest who will be discussing our Raise word. The Raise word is a word that will encourage you or empower you and at times inspire you to explore the word a little more for yourself. Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Raise podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. We've looked at some really interesting words so far this season. Today is one that I think we all really need, but not many of us really know how to do. So we're going to be looking at the word rest, and we're going to be looking at it with someone who is both incredibly busy, but also seems to be able to understand how to truly rest herself with all the things that she does around long COVID. So I'll let her introduce herself a little bit more, but morning, Jackie Baxter.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And before we dive into everything that you do, and you do a lot, which is interesting for the word rest, what does the word rest mean to you?
Yeah, it's interesting how the word rest has changed over the last sort of 4 years for me.
Yeah.
4.5 years ago, before I became unwell, I would have said rest was boring, it was lazy, it was unnecessary. You rest when you're dead, kind of thing. We don't do that. That's showing weakness. And it just never crossed my mind that it was something that I should be doing. I was always go, 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 go. And then I was put into this experience where I had to rest because I couldn't not. Life basically was resting. And then understanding the different types of rest that were, necessary to do. And I'm sure we can dive into all of that a lot more. And now I'm thinking, well, rest is something that I was forced to do. But actually, rest is something that we should all build into our lives as part of a balanced life. It's so important. I am a busy person. I love the go, go, go. I love the adrenaline. I love doing things. I love achieving things. But I now have this new appreciation for me time, for the time where I don't do stuff, where I can sit on the beach and listen to the waves, or where I can actually just sit in my garden, or and I definitely have to remind myself to do this sometimes because, as you say, I'm a really busy person and I like being a busy person. But it's a fundamental need for humans to be not doing as well as to be doing. And I think it's a lesson I had to learn the hard way. But I think my life is much better for it now that I actually kind of understand this concept a bit better and sort of embrace it in a way that I didn't before, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. I think I've learned a lot about productive rest over the years. I've needed to know that my rest is going to be productive because I'm such a productive person. Normally everything I do has got to have some kind of product at the end of it, that kind of you need to earn it kind of thing. But we're not talking about me. We are talking about you. Tell us what it is that you do, because you do a lot and it's fascinating.
Yeah, there's not a simple answer to that question. So I'll try and give you the kind of like bullet points.
Yeah.
What do I do? Well, I run the Long COVID podcast, which was something I started almost 3 years to the day, actually. It was earlier this week that I celebrated.
Happy birthday to the Long COVID podcast.
Yeah. I don't think celebrate is the right word, but it's certainly a sort of, I can certainly pat myself on the back, I think, for that.
Definitely. Yeah.
3 years. It's quite a lot. And I started this up when I was unwell, and it's really sort of snowballed into something that's I could never have imagined. But it's been sort of my journey. It's been a lot of other people's journeys and experiences, and it's been a lot of really wonderful people sharing their experiences, but also their knowledge and their their research, their medical knowledge. So that's been a real experience. I also work as a breathing instructor, so breathing was one of the things that helped me the most. So I decided, right, there's something here. This is amazing. I'm going to go and do this. There's a real need for this. So I'm now working as a breathing instructor, helping people with long COVID, with ME/CFS, to really, breathing is such a foundation of health. So getting that kind of and I think breathing actually ties very nicely into rest as well. How you're breathing is going to determine how your body is kind of working. And if you're trying to rest and your breathing is very fast, then you're not going to feel rested. So actually that ties in much nicer than I had really thought. So that's kind of me. I have now recovered from long COVID, but I feel like there's such a need in this sort of space. And that's kind of where I feel like I want to be at the moment.
Brilliant. Yeah, the podcast is incredible in terms of the different people that you've drawn on over the years to talk about long COVID. And I do hope that those people listening that have got experience of long COVID will seek out your podcast. We'll put everything in the show notes at the end. So you talk about the fact that you've recovered from long COVID, and I'm interested in this as someone that doesn't feel that I have at all. But where does rest play the biggest part in that, do you think, Jackie? And how did you do it? I think that's $1 million question.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, and like I said, my sort of idea of rest and its necessity and what it actually meant as well changed so much. Because to start with, I didn't see this coming. Like in hindsight, I should have done, because the life I was living beforehand didn't contain any rest, at all. But at the time, I didn't. So I went into this kind of like, oh, I'll push through because that's what I've always known. And it took me quite a long time. Within that, there was this sort of, push crash thing that, I think you yourself will be familiar with. And, where you sort of push yourself a bit too hard and then you just hit the deck. This isn't, I'm feeling a bit tired. This is like, I literally cannot lift my head up kind of thing, where you are forced into that rest. And then, the body will sort of over hours, days, weeks, months, depending on, what it looks like, then you'll go again and you'll push yourself too much. And then you end up back in that crash where rest is, it's not an option, it's a necessity. And understanding for me was that, oh, that's not working. It took me a long time to come to that realization, because I am an extremely stubborn person and I didn't know any better. But I eventually did kind of start to understand that, things like pacing, breaking up activities. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do the things. It's that you need to rest in between. And also, the kind of different, yes, and also reducing activity as well, but the understanding of the different types of rest as well. And some of them were much harder for me than others. So, we think about like physical rest. So in some ways, it's probably easier to understand. It's not necessarily easy to do, but it's easier to understand because you either do or you don't. You don't go for that walk. You don't do those chores. You get someone else to chop your vegetables. You don't walk up your stairs, or whatever it is, you don't do that physical thing. And you're physically kind of resting your body. If you're lying on the couch or you're lying in bed, your body is by and large physically resting. So that one's, it's not fun. It's not necessarily easy, especially if we feel there are things that we have to do. But, there's a kind of, you can easily understand it at least.
Yeah.
The sort of cognitive or mental kind of rest was for me one of the ones that was the hardest thing to do, because we can think, oh, well, I'm lying on my sofa, therefore I'm resting. And yes, in some ways you are. but actually maybe you're scrolling on your phone, maybe you're watching TV, maybe you're listening to a podcast, or even if you're not doing any of those things, maybe your brain has got that little hamster wheel in it where you're thinking and you're thinking and you're thinking and you're worrying maybe, or you're thinking about the things that you have to do. You're going through your to-do list, or you're what ifing. What ifing is one of the things that I do all the time. And if your brain is doing that, you're not resting either, because it's going round and round and round and round and round in circles. And actually, we can actually feel more tired sometimes from the cognitive exertion than we can from the physical exertion, because it's much harder to kind of, quantify, I suppose. So one of the things that really helped me with that was yoga nidra, because it just allowed me to kind of turn that brain off a bit. I wasn't always very good at it. But even just, within that, oh, my mind's wandered again. Okay, let's bring it back onto this yoga nidra that I'm listening to. And it became a real skill to kind of do that. There's other types of rest as well. There's the sort of emotional sort of exertion. And that one can be really difficult because you can't plan for that.
It's often
You can't
external,
plan when you
isn't it?
get exactly, you get a distressing email. You don't open that email knowing that it's going to distress you, and you can't always even know what is going to distress you. Or you get a phone call that's difficult, or your partner picks a fight. He probably doesn't mean to, but he can do that without kind of trying. So that those ones are very unpredictable. There's loads of other things as well, things like social, as a sort of extroverted introvert, I sort of find, if I'm around a lot of people, sometimes I can just kind of find that quite overwhelming. And sometimes I can love it. So there's all these kind of different types of rest. And I think it's kind of, for me, was kind of working out that, you got to fill all your buckets. But also you got to kind of have a bit of an idea of maybe my social bucket's filling up a bit. Maybe actually I need a day for me where I can go and sit on a beach and get away from people. Or maybe, emotionally there's quite a lot going on here. So actually I need to, find something I can do to do that. So it kind of opened my eyes that there was this like so many different types of rest, and that you kind of had to take them all into account. And when you're, with something like long COVID, where you're sort of like needing to really do a lot of resting, that when you're lying on your sofa, that you have to physically rest, you need to try and switch that brain off. You need to try and get away from all that kind of emotional stuff, maybe that's triggering you. Get away from all those people, maybe if they're, becoming overwhelming. And that actually just maybe doing one of them isn't always enough when we need to really, take that, shut off almost.
Going back to the particularly the mental rest, I know that you're also a real creative, as am I. And I remember right at the beginning of long COVID, sitting in the bath thinking, I need to switch off. I need to do something to stop myself from using all this energy up without even trying. And what did I do, Jackie? I wrote a poem about it, and I was like, right, this isn't going to work, is it? I'm not able to switch off my creative brain. But actually I find that side of things, the creative side of things, does fill my bucket. I think it's what I do with it then, and all the sharing and that bit of it that then becomes the tiring part of it. And actually I've taken quite a step back from sharing lots and lots of stuff, because I've realized just how much energy it takes to do all the social media marketing kind of side of things.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Creativity is such an incredible, I was going to say tool. I'm not sure tool even kind of like,
I think so. It's got its place, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like tool is a bit of an insignificant word for what creativity can be. But I think, it allows you to process things. It allows you to really kind of let out some of that emotion. Because I think I think, when you're going through difficult times, or even if you're not, but particularly if you are, there's a lot of emotion tied up in that, and a lot of those may be quite heavy emotions. Definitely things like, grief, maybe for a life that you lived before, and you don't know if you're going to get back. And some people have guilt and shame, maybe that they can't support their loved ones, or, just that sort of depression or sadness or loneliness or
Frustration.
hopelessness, frustration. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Whatever those emotions are,
Yeah.
that there's some really kind of hefty ones there.
Yeah.
And I think creativity can be such a great way of kind of letting that out, because we know that holding on to emotions, eventually the dam is going to break. So can we find some way to let them out? And some people like to write, they like to journal, some people like to paint or make things. And there've been some, really, really cool things that people have created, whether it's a kind of outpouring of
Yeah.
where they've thrown paint at a wall kind of thing, or whether it's, something, whatever that kind of expression is, and maybe in some ways that is a type of rest in itself, because you're letting go, you're letting that out.
The picture I
And I
have
think,
is like a bit of
yeah.
a steam valve, like when you
Mm.
turn the valve and it
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
how it
And it
feels to
lets
me.
off that
Mm.
steam, because if it doesn't, the pressure's going to
Yeah.
build and explode. Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm a very visual person, so I
Mm.
love that. But, coming back to what you were saying a moment ago about the reason why you do it, I think
Mm.
also being important. In the Facebook group that I run around, long COVID and creativity, on our Facebook banner, we have something that says, um, do it, it's important that you do it.
Mm.
And you do it in what I'm paraphrasing because I can't
Mm.
remember, but it's important that you do it. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter if you want to share it or not. But the important thing is that you do something. And I think, even to expand on that, it's that it doesn't have to be perfect. I think as sort of creatives, we have this kind of perfection thing. I think being a perfectionist is what can make me a good musician.
Mm.
You have to have that kind of perfectionist within, within that kind of, when you're practicing, you've got to be really like, oh, that I didn't like that note. Let's go and look at that. Oh, that was out of tune. Let's see if we can do that. Let's work on this technique. But also when we put that into resting, you can't
Mm.
rest perfectly. And actually that kind of perfection can make it worse.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah. I just
yeah.
want to, because the thing on your banner is important. So I've just found it. So it says,
Mm,
do it for you, not for
yeah.
anyone else. If you'd like to share, then this is a safe space where you can do so. But the important bit is that you are doing it. And I
Yeah.
think that's so profound in itself. But yeah, wow, the perfection of resting.
Mm.
You are singing my song. Because if you are somebody that wants to get it right or produce, then the feeling that you're not even resting properly can be a real barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that brings up more emotion, doesn't it, actually?
Hmm.
Because then you get frustrated with
Yeah.
yourself. Why can't I even rest right? Like
Yeah.
resting is doing nothing, and I can't even do that.
Yes. Do you know, I'm sure there are so many people going, oh my word, she is singing my song right now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. I think, people are different, but there's a lot of people. I mean, that's me. Driven, wanting to do things, busy. Thriving on that kind of adrenaline, and resting. It's a waste of time. But I think society really contributes to this as well. It's this thing about how our productivity is tied to our worth. And it
Absolutely. Yeah.
shouldn't be. It
Mm.
really shouldn't be, because I struggled with this when I was unwell. I couldn't do things. I couldn't do my job. I wasn't completely disabled that I could do nothing, but I certainly couldn't do what was asked of me. I couldn't reliably do things around the house. I couldn't say I would meet somebody. because I didn't know if I would be able to do it on that day. And, when you have to, when it's can't, can't, we start to feel, certainly I started to feel useless. I felt worthless, because that's kind of what society says. If you're not a productive, I'm going to put this in quotation marks, productive member of society, where you're contributing, then you're useless. You're sort of, you're taking rather than giving. And I think there's something fundamentally wrong if people don't feel like they have worth either way. Um, and I struggled with that. I still struggle with that now, because I still feel like I want to be productive and I want to give. But I'm also really starting to more understand about things like boundaries and my own self-worth. And actually that isn't necessarily tied to what I'm putting out. Actually, a lot of it is what is within. And that actually, if I want to go and sit on a beach for an hour, that doesn't make me lazy or less worthy or anything like that. It actually, in some ways, makes me more, because I'm respecting that that's what I need in that moment. Actually, I need to go and sit in the sun, which is a bit of a rarity in Scotland, but let's put that one.
It's wonderful to be talking to Jackie about rest. If you find this podcast relaxing, and hopefully you do, please share it with your friends and the rest of the people you know. See what I did there? And if you'd like to know the rest of the things that Raise does, do go on our website, www.raiseforall.com. Back to the episode. So you're talking about how often our productivity is tied up with our worth, and it's that whole tension between the human doing and the human being, isn't it? I've definitely found that I feel like I question my purpose quite a lot compared to all the things that I used to do, which is why I'm so grateful that I still have this podcast and it's something that I can manage. So what did you find that helped you recover in terms of rest? You talked about the yoga nidra. You talked a lot about the beach, which I feel very sad about because there ain't no beach around here. And I'd love to go to the sea every day, and it sounds wonderful. But what else did you find from a rest point of view that helped you in your recovery?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was doing less. And I think, again, this ties very much into the rest topic, doesn't it? And I think, it was, breathing was the first thing that I found that helped. And, kind of understanding how fundamental breathing is and how it impacts everything in our bodies and our lives. And, every single thing that we do is impacted by our breath and impacts on our breath. And, I found somebody who understood the breath and was sort of teaching me about it. And, I thought, right, well, I'm going to do this perfectly, which is hilarious. But also, I think, oh, I'll do this all the time. I'll do loads of this. And I was realizing that actually less was more. That pushing myself, trying to do things quickly, trying to do things, perfectly, trying to kind of do more was actually counterproductive. So the one thing that I was really good at, which was pushing myself and doing and all of this, was actually the thing that was making things worse. And that actually I needed to take the step back and give myself some space for the first time in my life and do less, just breathe, simple breathing. Let's not be overcomplicating things here. Let's we're not looking at advanced stuff. We're looking at very basic kind of the way I breathe. So doing that, and then as my breathing started to settle, as it became more functional, as it sort of served me rather than triggered me, that sort of allowed me to rest in a better way, in a deeper way, that kind of deeper rest rather than just lying on my sofa with my breath really fast and scrolling on my phone, which isn't really rest. Allowing myself access to things like yoga nidra, which was amazing, because if you're, or meditation, or, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So, if you're trying to meditate and your breath is very fast, then you're not going to be able to, because you're going to be constantly kind of triggered by that. So that, and then, yeah, just, doing less in all ways, breaking things up, movement is so important to me. I've always been a very active person. So I was always trying to do too much. And if I found a level of stuff that I could manage to do, I would always try to push that, and sort of realizing actually, okay, let's kind of work out what sort of things I can do and what sort of things I can do maybe if I take breaks, or if I, breathe first, if I rest first, if I, so yeah, doing less, finding out what the sort of minimum rather than the maximum.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the breathing and the yoga nidra and the sort of, yeah, cognitive rest, being able to turn that brain off, or certainly being able to turn it down.
Yeah.
And even understanding actually on some level that my brain isn't like other people's. And I don't mean that in a sort of arrogant sort of way. It's more a kind of, my brain is very creative. It fireworks. It's always on the go. It's got ideas. It's this, it's that. It's amazing. But also it can kind of sabotage me because it just won't turn off. So I have to be more careful maybe than other people who don't have quite such an active brain, to know when to say, brain, can we not for a minute? Can we just rest? Can we actually rest the brain? So that was kind of a really profound kind of realization for me, that yeah, my brain wasn't like other people's, and that there were times where it needed to turn off. And yeah, you picked up on my beach, because cold water was one of the things that I found really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And actually, what I would really enjoy, especially, when the weather was good or where it was calm, to get in that water, not for very long, because the longer you spend in there, the more energy you need to warm up, and that isn't rest. So actually getting in to get those benefits, but just for a couple of minutes, certainly to start with. But then, when you're in that cold water, it turned my brain off. There was no overthinking. There was no what ifing. You're focused very much on getting into that water because it's really cold. And I'm really lucky. We have Loch Ness just down the road, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Certainly in the country, I would say. And it became a really special place to me because it was somewhere where I would go and get in that water, and then I could sit on that beach, and there's not very good signal there, so I couldn't scroll Facebook. There's no sort of notifications coming through so much because that signal's not very good. You can just listen to that waves, and or the breeze, or feel the sun on your face. And our nervous systems love water. They absolutely love water.
Yeah.
That's why you get a lot of meditations with waves in the background.
Yeah.
It's that sort of soothing feeling. It's that feeling of being held in the water, maybe.
And it's rhythmic as well, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Totally. So yeah, that beach, it's when I sort of feel stressed out, I can just kind of like shut my eyes and take myself there sometimes and be like, can we just sit on the beach for a minute? And you can almost kind of like, feel that wind in your hair, and the water lapping around your ankles, and the birds tweeting, and that sort of smell of water, which sounds really stupid, but that you can sort of smell it, and just sort of, yeah, even just for a few seconds, take myself there, downshift. Okay. And now we carry on. We have a to-do list of 20 million things. But, trying to just, break that up and balance that in my life. And, I feel like, I did rest as a necessity. I had to, and now it's something that, I'll be climbing mountains. I'll be up on those ridge lines, and it's like, right, well, actually, it's really beautiful here. Rather than plowing straight on and, beasting that next descent or, whatever. Actually, I'm just going to sit and really just enjoy being here, because I suppose it's when you can't do things, you get put in this position, you know, I didn't ask for long COVID. It was a horrible experience. And I had this time where I couldn't do things. And I feel like I'm so much more grateful now for the things that I can do again. You know, that sort of awe of being in those places that I
Yeah.
couldn't get to.
Yeah.
So I'll be sitting on top of my mountaintop thinking, actually, I'm going to soak this up for another few minutes. Or actually, there's a loch on that next slope and I'm going to go and swim in it. And I'm going to feel that water. And then, then I'll carry on. I'll go beast that next descent, but I'm just going to enjoy being here. And, I think in kind of an exercise context, taking a rest is a kind of sign of, I was out running and I had to take a break. It's that kind of like, oh, well, you're not very good at that running then, are you, if you had to take a break? And, kind of, yeah, when I'm up in the hills, I now kind of like, I want to take a break. I want to take that break and I want to just enjoy it because, yeah, I had that time when I couldn't be there and couldn't do that and couldn't feel that feeling of, sitting on top of your mountaintop in the sun. Again, sun isn't always there, but.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it sounds wonderful being able to do that. I mean, I know you had and struggled with long COVID for a number of years, so there will have been those really emotional times that we talked about where you can't you can't plan what's going to happen, and stressful situations and things like that. I know a lot of listeners have got so many different home backgrounds where they are trying to manage long COVID alongside so many other situations of family or poverty or social disadvantaged, all that kind of thing. When those kind of crisis points hit, where did you find your rest at that point? Did you find your rest?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I mean, there were definitely times where I felt like I didn't. I didn't manage that well at all. I would have maybe avoided that crash had I actually seen it coming. Or, but yeah, there are times, I think, it can be very difficult. And I was very lucky in some ways that, I had some sick leave, I had a supportive partner. I don't have kids that are relying on me to look after them. It must be very, very difficult for people in a lot of situations. I think, yeah, I mean, understanding and listening to my body really helped.
Yeah.
Because there were so many times where I thought, oh, if I'd rested then this crash might not have happened. And there are always signs, there are always those warning signs if we've kind of tuned into our body and listening. My breath for me was one of the things that was a warning sign.
Okay.
So if I started noticing my breaths picking up, if I started noticing I was breathing into my chest, that for me was a sign, oh, okay, I'm starting to move into that kind of fight flight. This is where I need to rest now, because if I don't, things are going to spiral. And, a lot of the time I could. There were a few times where I actually, you couldn't, if you're driving, for example, which was something I didn't do very much of when I was unwell. But, if you're driving, you can't necessarily just be like, I'm just going to close my eyes and lie down, because that is not recommended.
Sure.
Please don't do that. And actually driving is very stimulating. You're getting a lot of kind of, messages. So for me, I really struggled with that a lot of the time, even as a passenger. So yeah, in those kind of difficult times, I think, trying to really prioritize health and recovery, I think is helpful. The what did they say on the airplanes? Put your own oxygen mask on before helping others.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I don't have kids, but, I definitely feel a lot of kind of responsibility. There were times where I have to put a podcast episode out this week. I have to because people are relying on me. And, I felt that, push to need to do things. And I think I sort of learned that actually I can't help other people if I don't look after myself.
Yeah.
And when you're unwell, that is even more important. I think, it's not just a kind of like, well, I'm going to get a little bit run down this week if I
Yeah.
push myself a bit too hard, so maybe I should take a chill. It's more like, I am not going to recover. I might get worse. I'm really, kind of running myself into the ground. I'm already really struggling. I've got to put myself first. And that can be so difficult because you've got people expecting things of you. You've got, people that make you feel like you have to do things, whether it's, I don't know, family or work or your own expectations, which can often be worse.
Yeah.
Having to ask for help can be really difficult.
Yeah.
I was terrible at that. Even though I had a partner who was happy to help, I still didn't want to ask him for help because I didn't want to I didn't want to let go of some of that sort of independence or
Yeah. Yeah.
control that
Yeah.
I felt like that was so important to me. So I think, yeah, I think really prioritizing recovery, right, prioritizing yourself. Self-care isn't selfish, was one of those kind of mantras that
Yeah.
I kind of kept saying to myself. And I wasn't always good at listening to them. But, really trying to do that, is this thing that I'm telling myself that I have to do, is it really a have to, or does it have to be done right now? Could someone else help with that?
Yeah.
Um, and, or if I do have to do it, is there a way I can do it that will work for me? Can I
Yeah.
break it up? Or, whatever that is, could I do this meeting from home rather than traveling to do it?
Yeah.
That there are so many options. There are always more options than we kind of think to start with. And I am aware I'm saying that from a position of privilege. But, I think it's difficult but important, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just I'm just having a look. There's a really great bit that I love. Most of my listeners will know that I'm a Christian, and there's a really good bit in the
Mm.
Bible, and it just says, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. And that's something that I've really started to live. But I could do what I want today, but it's not always going to be the right choice for me. And I think that's one of the things that we've really learned through this condition is that, we do have choices, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. And they're not easy choices because I don't know about you, but I'm often choosing between can I do this nice thing or this nice thing? And sometimes actually finding out, no, I can't do either of them actually.
No.
I'm not going to be able to do any of the nice things.
Yeah.
But
And
we
isn't that
can take control.
heartbreaking? Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I found at one point that I was starting to feel better. I'd found some things that helped, and I was getting up and I was doing my relaxation. I was doing my breathing. I was, doing this. I was doing that. I was doing my journaling. And then I was doing some more breathing. And I was putting myself through this like recovery boot camp. And I was like, hang on a second. This isn't rest. I'm doing all of this
It's
things
become
and
a big
it's
tick
not
list.
actually rest.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
then it was thinking, okay, well, I need to find something that fills my joy bucket. Because I think it's important to do things that make you smile. And that to somebody who maybe can't leave the house, it's like, well, I can't do anything that I enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think when we talk about joy, I think people tend to think about the big things.
Yeah.
And I'm the same, what gives you the most joy? Climbing mountains, going to remote loss, getting on my bike, all these things that you can't do if you're not well. Okay, so let's bring that a little smaller. What would give you that little tiny bit of joy? Is it like a cup of hot chocolate? Is it, a nice smelling candle and, maybe those don't work for people if they have intolerances. But even just I notice things now like the sun coming through the window in the morning. That makes me smile because it's a new day, it's a new opportunity. I don't know, there's something about sun that just makes us smile, I think sometimes. It's life-giving warmth. I don't know
Mm.
what it is that makes it, but certainly for me, oh,
Yeah.
it's sunny this morning. That makes me smile. And I think, it's the little things that are so important when you're struggling. And actually, little things become big things over time. And the more of those little things you start to notice, the more you see. It's like buses, isn't it? When you start looking for things, you start seeing them
Mm.
everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And it can be really difficult because, you know, I don't feel like, when you're unwell, it's like there isn't any joy in my life. I don't have anything that I enjoy. I'm sick all the time.
Yeah.
And it's so hard when you are. You feel like there's so much negative in your life. But yeah, I think, the joy bucket is important, even if it feels very, very insignificant, the things that you're kind of adding into it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, I really struggled with the word acceptance.
Yeah.
Somebody said acceptance to me kind of early on, and oh gosh, I
Mm-hmm.
railed against it
Yeah.
because I was never going to accept that I was going to be this unwell forever. Like
Yeah.
that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
So I was just like, nope, 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 nope. And then it was kind of understanding over time that I don't know what that person meant when they said acceptance to me. Maybe they did mean that I should accept that this was life. But for me, that acceptance was this is me for now,
Mm.
just for now. In
Mm.
this moment, I am not feeling good. My breathing
Mm.
is struggling. Maybe I'm feeling extremely unwell. Maybe I'm very fatigued, whatever that looked like for me and for anyone listening in this moment. But that doesn't mean it's forever. It just means for now. And
Mm.
if you can accept it for now, just for this moment, then you stop fighting. And
Yeah.
suddenly you can allow yourself to rest. Whereas if you're constantly fighting against yourself
Mm.
or, what your beliefs or whatever, then you're not resting. And I guess that comes back to that kind of cognitive rest, doesn't it? If you're
Yeah.
fighting yourself in your head, then then that's really not
Yeah.
helping.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
for now, this is the situation for now. Oh, and there's a little bit of sun. Okay, well, for now, can I just accept that there's a little bit of a glimmer of something?
Yeah.
Um, and allowing yourself to feel terrible as well. Coming back to those big emotions, it's like don't hold them in. Let those emotions out. Allow
Mm.
yourself to feel that because we can feel so much better afterwards. Actually,
Yeah.
if you let that let that dam go or let that valve go,
Mm.
then afterwards you can kind of feel it's the calm after the storm. I think a little bit, which can help us again maybe to find that rest that we so desperately need.
Yeah. We're nearly at the end of the podcast. We could talk about this for ages. I feel like it needs to be much longer in some ways. But just a couple of things. I've been reading I'm doing a journal called the Tiger and the Snail. And this is something that really hit me. Being grateful is not being happy. It's appreciating what you have. Happiness can come from gratitude. You can be grateful for the food the world has given you today, or the warm bed or trees that give you shelter. I myself am grateful for meeting a new friend, you. But that being grateful is not being happy really released something in me because I always thought
Yeah.
that I'm really struggling with gratitude because I just don't feel happy today. But that's not what it's about. Happiness can come from gratitude, but being grateful is literally just saying, I've got it. So the sun is
Yeah.
here. It might not be making me happy, but it's here. Therefore, I need to be grateful for it. Jackie, we always do a little challenge for the listeners. I mean, my goodness, there are so many challenges, I think. And actually, I think you really summed it up just in the last bit that you were talking about in terms of what gives you joy. So for those people listening, what is it? What little thing gives you joy? And can you enable that to bring you some rest? So can you intentionally do that thing that gives you joy, whether it's hot chocolate or the candle or the beach? Can you really intentionally do that thing and rest within it? Is that too complicated, Jackie? I think I've complicated
I think
it.
that sounds good. I think that sounds good. I think, the joy can almost be in our minds as well. I got told that my imagination can be one of my greatest strengths, which, I never really thought of. I just thought everyone, again, comes back to I thought everyone's brain worked like mine. But actually, yeah, if you think, oh yeah, okay, I'm grateful for the sun, can you really feel that? Feel it in your body. What does that feel like? Because yeah, I think again that can maybe help to find rest, to find a little comfort in what is probably discomfort. It's that 1%, isn't it? If we can do something that helps just a tiny bit, then it's worth doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been absolutely
I like
brilliant.
that.
We'll put all of your stuff in the show notes. As we said, Jackie has got a podcast. She's got a Facebook group that is around creativity, particularly for people with long COVID and ME/CFS. You do have a breathing Facebook community, lots of important things. So please do get in touch with Jackie and allow her to share the things that she's been through. And now the final bit, because as we said, we are creatives, is I always write a poem, an on-the-spot poem for every guest. Now, I was going to bail, Jackie, because actually today a poem came up on my Facebook group today that I wrote last year about rest, and everything within me just wants to read that. But I know it's important to create, so I'm going to be brave. So just give me a minute. You might not live near Loch Ness, but there are ways to find rest. Can you grab that 1% and with intent, make it stretch into something that is just for you? Can you close your eyes and imagine the sun on your face? Where is that place that brings you rest, that makes you the best that you can be just for now? You don't need success. You don't need to be the best at rest. You just need to breathe and find release. You just need to be. There you go. I had to get Loch Ness in there. I was determined to get Loch Ness in there. Jackie, thank you.
It's a magical place.
So much for everything that you bring. Thank you that through your recovery, you are bringing so much to those people that are still looking at what that looks like. That is fantastic. Thank you for being so giving and generous in all that you've learned through your pain and difficult times. I know that the long COVID community are really being able to change because of what you do. So thank you so much for that. Have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.